I'm Loraine Ballard Morrill. For the last number of years, I have been very, very honored to be a part of Kristin's Crusade, which is specifically designed to raise awareness about dating violence. Joining us on the line right now is Bill Mitchell. He is one of the founders of the Kristin Mitchell Foundation, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate this.
All right, Bill, as much as it pains me to ask you this question, I guess really we need to talk about the origin story of why you and your wife and your family set up the Kristin Mitchell Foundation and Kristin's Crusade.
Well, we have to go back almost 12 years ago to June 3rd of 2005. Which for anybody listening in will feel like a very long time ago, but for anybody in our family will feel like yesterday or earlier this morning, because it was in that day or on that day that we got a phone call from detectives who met with us and told us that our daughter had been murdered early that day in Conshohocken at her apartment by her ex-boyfriend. So yeah, that was our baptism into the world of domestic violence and dating violence and all of that. That was our hard start.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I know that you decided and your family decided that you weren't going to just let this tragedy go without responding to it. And as a result of your activism, you have created this foundation, which is designed to raise awareness about dating violence. And really, at the time that you started doing this, there really wasn't a whole lot of conversation about dating violence. People are aware of domestic violence within relationships, but within dating, especially on college campuses, there wasn't a lot of conversation about that. So tell us what you and your family decided to do in order to raise awareness about what was going on our campuses and amongst our young people.
The first year for us after Kristin was killed, we didn't do very much at all because it was really mostly about trying to understand how this could happen to her, how she could be dating somebody for only 4 months and then evidently tried to break up and then was killed by him. She was stabbed to death by him in her apartment. But for the longest time, it was really about the loss of somebody who was such a central part of your life. And then finally, 10 months later, he pled guilty. He went to prison. He's in prison at the moment. But then, through just being asked on occasion to speak with people, we saw the power it had. And people would start to seek us out and ask if we would come and speak. And so for that reason, we not only spoke about what happened to Kristin, literally, but we also found ourselves having to learn more about intimate partner violence, dating violence, sexual violence, abuse, you name it. We couldn't get up in front of a group of people and just talk about what happened to our daughter. We had to talk about why things like this had happened. Now, for a lot of people, you had no idea how anybody who loves somebody could snap and kill them or even beat them up. I mean, domestic violence is still something that is hard to figure out. It's perplexing, especially on a dating level when these people have not known each other terribly long, oftentimes, clearly not married if they're dating. So we had a lot of work to do, a lot of figuring out, and the more we figured out, the more we also learned how little everybody else knew. I mean, that Kristin's own friends, they had no idea, based upon his behavior, what this could ultimately lead to. So we wanted to take the bits and pieces that they knew and the fact that they didn't see where it could go, we figured that applied to a lot of people. So for that reason, we started to learn about warning signs and red flags and all of these types of things so that we could get out and speak with people through the foundation and just on our own get out and speak with people because we didn't want another family to have to face what we faced back then and continue to face, of course, for the rest of our lives. So,
yeah. Well, Bill, let's talk about what those warning signs are. I think that what's very challenging and difficult is that people around the focus of dating violence often don't know exactly what's going on. They may have a gut feeling, but they often don't recognize the signs and they don't know what to do. So let's begin by talking about what are the signs that people need to look out for to make sure that they can act on and be supportive of the person who's the object of this dating violence or abuse.
Yes, exactly. That's a very good point. So what happens is that I always tell people when I give speeches to trust their feelings. If you see a relationship and you feel like it's odd, or you feel like one person seems to be trying their best to exhibit a lot of control over another person and manipulate the other person, because this could be happening to your daughter or could be happening to a very close friend of yours in school or in your neighborhood. But if you see those type of things, what I'm telling people, what our organization has been telling people, is don't just figure, well, he's difficult, or of course it could happen the other way. Abuse goes either way. You don't just look at it like this is just a difficult person, or, well, he's just being possessive, as I used to hear when I was a kid. He's possessive, she's possessive, wants that person's time all the time. These signs, these warning signs, all seem to go back to one basic point, which is control. One person trying to control another person's life at just about every moment, because it builds over time. So in the very beginning of two people dating, there may be some bits and pieces of this person trying to tell the other person what to do, but as the abuser or the controller, let's say, sees success, then that person tends to dial up that control, and it becomes greater and greater. So then, we start to find ourselves seeing different techniques. Now, some of the techniques of control could be just these little but constant put-downs of another person. So it's just a way of putting you in your place, or putting your friend in her place, or it could be controlling her, this dominant behavior. I have to get my way. I'm right, you're wrong, that type of thing. Or somebody who seems to be very interested in your cell phone, maybe checking your cell phone to see who you've been calling, or who you've been texting, or who are you emailing. But you can start to see they come out of the same place. Jealousy comes out of that place, as I said, possessiveness. Somebody who maybe exhibits an explosive temper or has these big mood swings. And what happens is that the abusive person does that, and then if the person being abused puts up with it or backs off, that is another way of controlling another person. So as people get to know each other, as let's say they do have a relationship or they do get married, then it gets into things like financially controlling another person. Those are really the more mature versions, or in some cases more insidious, but that type of thing. But one person trying to make another person feel a certain way so that power is exhibited, that's really at the center of the warning signs that we talk about.
Bill, I wonder if you could also talk a bit more about what we can do, because it's so difficult. In the case of your daughter, beautiful, and you just graduated from St. Joseph's University, and
right.
the criminal, the murderer who's now currently serving time, on the outside probably looked like a pretty upstanding young man, handsome, athlete, etc. So I think that sometimes we get thrown off by the outward appearance of a relationship. What are some things that we can do?
Well, for one of the things, as I said earlier, is obviously pay a lot of attention to those people you care about. Pay attention to what's going on in the world, especially like if you're a good friend or if you're a parent. You're kind of doing that all the time. But it's when it gets into these areas that seem bothersome, that's when you have to step it up a little bit. And I tell people to try to learn the warning signs of these kinds of relationships. If you feel bothered by something, then it's kind of like you have to trust that this could get a lot worse, because abusive behavior tends to get worse, and violent behavior, someone hitting somebody, you might see that. You might be out with another couple, all of a sudden, wham, somebody gets shoved hard, and you think, wow, that was bad. So these things tend to escalate, and you have to trust that they will, and if it's happening in front of you, then I feel it puts it on you as the friend or the parent or a neighbor or a cousin, whoever you are, to start to do something about it. Now, I tell people, look, there are plenty of websites out there that you can just put in dating violence or intimate partner violence and look around. You can go with our site if you want. You can start at our website, which is christmascrusade.org. Kristin's is spelled with two I's. Crusade starts with a K, so it's not always the easiest thing. But if you put in Kristin Mitchell Foundation or Kristin Mitchell, it'll take you there. But there are, in the world, 800 numbers you can call. There are counselors everywhere. If you're in college, there are counselors there, I guarantee it, at every college, every school, every university, every high school even. But you can go call an 800 number. The one I tell people to go to is the national line, which is 800-799-SAFE, S-A-F-E. So it's pretty easy to remember. The hardest part to remember is the 799. 800-799-SAFE. But you can call. I've done it. You can chat with a counselor. They're not going to call you back. They're not going to send in the police and the SWAT team because you're talking about something. You know, it is perfectly safe. It is perfectly anonymous. But you can say, look, I have a friend, and this is what he or she is going through, and I'm very concerned. And they'll help you out quite a lot. But you have to figure if you see smoke or smell smoke that there's a fire because you're only seeing bits and pieces of what's going on. And you have to assume it'll get worse. The other thing is I tell people, so those are things you have to do, I feel. I mean, if you see it, you've heard this broadcast, you hear Loraine and me today, you know, then figure, tag, you're it. You know, you're part of this thing. So do something. There are some things, Loraine, that you should not do, and I'll do them quickly.
Sure.
One of the things that I know I would do, if Kristin had come to me and said, look, I'm in this relationship and I need to talk about it, probably you're going to do a number of things. You're going to find yourself wanting to say things like, how could you let this happen to you? What were you thinking about? You know, you can see that because you're disappointed and because it's frustrating to hear it and you can't believe your friend became immersed in this thing. But the truth of it is you don't want to judge that person. You don't want to be aggressive. Imagine for a minute somebody shares with you. It might be the very first time they've ever shared this with anybody. You know, they're trusting that they can talk with you and say, look, I got to tell you about something that's going on. And it could be your college roommate or a friend. It could be anybody. And they start telling you about it, and you think, oh, my God, how could you let this happen to you? Well, if you pounce on that person and you express your disappointment, it seems odd, but you're actually making it more about your feelings than the other person. And if you keep doing that, if you keep jumping on that other person, you don't realize it, but you've actually become another person in your friend's mind who is abusing your friend. Because that guy or whoever it is out there in the world is doing that, and now you're doing it as if it's about you and your feeling. So you don't want to do it. You don't want to make the victim feel more anxious and fearful about what's going on, because if they're coming to you and talking about it, they're freaking out about it a little bit. They're scared. And the last thing you'd want to do to a friend or your daughter or whoever it is to accidentally make things worse. Another thing you don't want to do, and I'll tell it quickly again, is you do not, and this is more to the fathers and mothers and sometimes brothers of people that have this happen, you don't want to go after the abuser. If you're the father and this guy dating your daughter is doing things that really bother you, you're going to want to jump in your car and drive over there and have a chat or more with that person. That's a bad idea. That typically does not work out very well. You can be now the person who's being arrested. You never know what it could lead to. That person could flip out because all of a sudden you're trying to jump in and break the control that guy's trying to exhibit. Someone can get hurt, someone could wind up in jail, someone could wind up killed. And there are examples of those out there. So you have to ease into it, and that's why I go back to go to a counselor, talk about it. Say, I've got this friend, this thing's going on. You can, again, call an 800 number, but you have to kind of get a little bit educated before you jump in there and feel like you're going to save the day with your friend.
Bill, coming up is your annual Kristin's Crusade run. Life Your Way? Is that what it is? I forget.
Well, okay, so Kristin's Crusade is the event, and it's at St. Joseph's. It'll be on April the 8th in the morning. So if you go to our website, or if you just put in Kristin's Crusade, I'm sure you'll find it very quickly. So it's April 8th in the morning. It's a Saturday, and it's a 5K run walk. So you don't have to go there and try to run a 5K, if you haven't done it. I have never run one of those, so my next time on one of those will be my best time, right? But you can still go and you can walk it. It's great. We typically have a good crowd. We have a bunch of people who are very interested in this subject, and we have little kids out there. We have people of all ages, families, And then, of course, a lot of college students from St. Joseph's or people from the surrounding area. So, but it's come out. You know, we will have that. We will have a raffle. We will give out prizes and different kinds of things. You can get there at something like, it's on our website, but you can get there at like 8 or 8:30 in the morning. The run walks at 10. And usually we're wrapping up by about 11:15, 11:30. So you're only really taking up your morning. You'll be out before noon. It is not an all-day thing that you have to just devote your whole Saturday to and feel like you lost a day. And believe me, it'll be a great investment, and you will learn about what I'm talking about. Because when you stop to think about the truth, which is 1 in 3 women will experience dating violence in their lifetime. Now, that's not people from a rough, depressed, economically down neighborhood. That's everybody. That's all women. That's the people in the McMansions, people in big houses, small houses, no houses, apartments, townhouses, you name it. It's all women. 1 in 3 in their lifetime, and it typically happens between the ages of 16 and 24. So if you think about all of your female friends, or female anybody you know, 1 in 3 will experience it. I'm out there trying to help dial down that number, doing what I can. I mean, I lost my one and only daughter in June of 2005, and I'm doing it, of course, for her, and I'm doing it specifically nowadays, of course, for everybody but her, because her story has been told. She's in heaven. She's, wherever she's going to be, and I'm sure she's looking at our efforts, saying this is the best use of your time that day. So, well, good.
And let's close out by talking a little bit about Kristin. I remember at the last Kristin's Crusade run and walk, your son spoke about his sister. But for those who never met Kristin, I wonder if you could just very briefly just bring her to life for us.
Well, the thing that people wrote on sympathy cards and things that we received, things that we heard in the week after she was killed was the very first thing they would say is her beautiful smile. They always thought of her as a very upbeat young woman. She was attractive, yes, she was cute, she was pretty, but she was a nice person. I think that Kristin was one of these people that her number one focus in life was on other people, like other young women. I think that had she not gone to St. Joseph's, she actually was a food marketing major. She had won a job at General Mills in Dresher, Pennsylvania, and that she had a job lined up. I mean, she was going to be a sales associate. And had she not done that, I think that she would have been an incredible psychologist, specifically concentrating on young women, because her empathy was there. She was a real person, a regular person, and she had things she struggled with and was working through. So, but I think that she was a giver. I think she was a combiner, not a divider as a person. But, I mean, I still, in the echoes of my mind, can hear her laughter in the background. I mean, she and her brother were great together. They were 4 years apart, but they were incredible, especially on vacations. They'd be in the backseat coming up with the next thing to pull on mom and dad. And so it was always pretty funny. They used to kid us, and if my wife tried to tone it down, they'd call her the fun police, and that was kind of a running gag for us for years. But she was good. She was an equestrian rider when she could. She wanted to get back to that after college, because college she had to kind of stop for a while and get busy with other things. But I think that she was a generous person and warm. She would have been a great wife, a great mother at some point in time, and I think she would have given a lot to society. She was into Reiki healing and things like that, all kinds of other forms of healing and things. And she was very deep. She liked to write a lot of poetry, and she was just a very sweet person. So
yeah,
she is sorely missed. And that's my main feeling about her nowadays. Besides that, we're doing so many things in her name, I feel like the loss is just still very painful. But I do feel when I get up and give a speech or when our foundation does something, I do feel like she's kind of standing there somewhere with us, keeping an eye on things. So I don't feel like I've completely lost her. I really don't. And I'm actually writing a book about the whole thing right now, too. So I've had to go back and walk through all those early days. And, it's a real mixed bag to do something like that.
Well, Bill, I want to acknowledge you and your wife and your son for all that you do. The Kristin Mitchell Foundation is
Yes.
about raising awareness about dating violence. And once again, on the 8th of April, there will be Kristin's Crusade, and it's a run walk. I am going to be there. I am very happy to be a supporter of this very, very important cause. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. Bill Mitchell, the Kristin Mitchell Foundation, raising awareness about dating violence. Thank you a lot.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
I'm Loraine Ballard Morrill.